Hello, you guys. Welcome to the final episode of Virtual Tween Baking. This is going to be my last month doing this, and I want to thank you guys for taking part this month. And if you've taken part in other months, which I know a lot of you have, thank you. I hope you guys have learned a lot, and I hope you've had a lot of fun learning how to bake. And now you can share the love and bake for other people and make all these awesome recipes that we have made together. This month, we are going to be making some easy, no-knead rosemary bread. I don't know if you guys are familiar with rosemary, but it's a really nice, strong herb that gives bread a really great taste. It's great. I mean, it makes everything taste and smell so good. When you bake it, your house is gonna smell amazing. It's really nice for like fall, and for winter. It's just like a nice warm herb. So I hope you guys really like this one, and it's really easy, not a lot of like manual labor, like it's no need, but you will, once you try it, you will need to make this again and again. So let's jump right into it. So in your kits, you're going to have 2 1/4 cups of flour. I've kind of portioned my stuff out in little bowls here. We're going to do 1 1/4 teaspoon rapid rise yeast. That's what's going to make our bread poof up and rise. We're going to do 2 teaspoons of coarse salt. I chose coarse salt because it's like the bigger granules. So when we sprinkle some on top at the end, it's not just going to like dissolve. It's going to give it a little bit of texture. And it works really well for this kind of more rustic loaf of bread. Oh, what else? A cup of warm water. We don't want like boiling hot water. This is not in your kit. This is what you're gonna have to measure this out at home. A cup of warm water. If the water is too hot, it will actually kill the yeast. So we want warm water, not boiling hot water. About 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil. I've measured mine out here. And finally, I have about a tablespoon of dried rosemary here. And we're gonna put this into our bread, and then we're gonna sprinkle some on top before we bake it. And it's gonna be so delicious. So, I think we should jump right into it. Also, sorry, I should have mentioned, you're also gonna need a spatula because we're not gonna be kneading this with our hands. We will have to like mix it at one point, and the dough is gonna be really kind of sticky and wet. I recommend a nice non-stick spatula for that step, and a whisk to whisk our dry ingredients when we pour those all out into our bowl, okay? So I'll let you guys make sure you got everything you need. I'll meet you at step number 1. All right. Step number 1, in a large bowl, check. We're gonna whisk together our flour, yeast, half of our salt. Don't dump in all the salt, half of the salt, which is gonna be about a teaspoon, and half of the dried rosemary, okay? That's important. Don't dump everything in. The ingredients that say to add half, only add half, okay? So we're going to do our flour, all of the flour. We're going to do our yeast, easy. Half of the salt. I'm just gonna eyeball half of this. It doesn't have to be exact, but don't add all of it in there. We're gonna want some to sprinkle on top, okay? When our loaf is ready to be baked. So that's half of our salt. A little bit more for luck, and half of our dried rosemary. And this is our dried rosemary. Before you guys dump this in, oh, smell it. It smells so good. Okay, so we'll do about half of the rosemary. Lovely. We're gonna take our handy dandy whisk, make sure everything in here is evenly mixed. We don't want any big clumps of rosemary. We want our yeast to be able to kind of spread out here. Okay, so there is our dry ingredients. So now let's move on to step number 2. All right, moving on to step number 2. Dry ingredients are evenly mixed. Step number 2 is add the warm water to the bowl. Make sure the water is just warm and not hot. I already kind of explained that. Stir with a spoon or a rubber spatula. I recommend a rubber spatula. There's our good stuff. I've got a cup of warm water. I'm going to kind of drizzle this in. And I'm going to take my non-stick spatula and just kind of scrape the edges of my bowl here. Make sure everything gets kind of moistened by that water. There's no big dried clumps left on the side of the bowl or the bottom of the bowl. I'm kind of scraping and like pressing with my spatula. This might take a minute to make sure everything is kind of evenly moistened by that water. I mean, the recipe says this is going to be kind of like a thick batter. Mine's kind of more like a dough. So depending on, you know, what yours is like, as long as there's no like big dried clumps, I think we're going to be in good shape. Yeah, mine's definitely more like a dough than a batter, but we're gonna go with it. And because it is not super wet, I'm not gonna like straight up knead this entire thing, but I'm kind of just taking my clump of dough here and I'm gonna kind of just like rub it around the edges to make sure all of the dried bits kind of get incorporated in there. Pressing it down a little bit, and I'm gonna be left with a nice big old dough ball here, okay? And again, if yours is, maybe in the recipe they added like a little more water than me or something. Mine is more like a dough than a batter. So if yours is a little bit wetter and more like a batter, that's fine. That's what the recipe says. If yours is a little bit drier, like mine is, that's fine too. We're gonna go with it, okay? So now we're going to step number 3. Cover with plastic wrap or a towel and let sit at room temperature until about double in size. This will take about 45 minutes for rapid rise yeast. So I've got my clean towel here. I'm going to gently cover, and it's a warmer day outside, so this should rise pretty nicely. We're gonna let that double in size. Recipe says it should take about 45 minutes. I'll check it in about 45 minutes, see where we're at. If it needs longer, I can do longer. I'll let you guys know how long mine took, but we're just gonna leave it for now, so I'll check back in with you guys after about 45 minutes, and we'll move on to step number 4. Awesome. All right, you guys, I waited on my dough a little bit more than 45 minutes. I actually ended up waiting a little bit over an hour because it wasn't rising as quickly as I expected. It kind of depends on the weather, the different conditions in your house. So if it's warmer in your house, maybe the dough will rise quicker. If it's a little bit cooler, it might take a little bit longer. That's okay. It can vary household to household. But I have some major poofage now in my dough. So we are not going to like punch this down and deflate it. We're gonna leave it, and we are going to move on to step number 4, which is do not punch down the dough, okay? Add a small drizzle of oil to the bottom of a cast iron skillet or pie pan. 8-inch size works well. I have included, this is like about 8 inches here in diameter. These little pie pans I included in your kits. Or if you have like an 8-inch cast iron pan at your house, you can use that also. But just in case you don't have that, I included a little pie pan in everybody's kits. That's what I'm gonna be using today. So we're gonna add a little bit of our oil to the bottom of our pie pan. We're gonna save more of this to kind of coat our dough in. So don't drizzle all of this in the bottom of your pie pan. I'm gonna give a little drizzle here, like that. See, I've still got some left. I'm actually going to take my hand and kind of rub this around a bit. This will also prevent our bread loaf from sticking to our pan. Now, step number 5, we're going to drizzle a generous teaspoon of the oil over the dough and also drizzle some on our hands. We're gonna rub the oil on our hands, and this will help us not to make a big sticky gooey mess with our dough. It'll help keep our hands nice and nonstick. We're gonna take the dough out of our bowl, gather it in our hands, gently shape it into a ball. The dough, the original recipe said it's gonna be really sticky, but again, when I did it, it's not like a big sticky gooey mess. It's kind of like, it is more of like a regular bread dough, at least in my opinion, so it shouldn't be that difficult. Let's give this a try. So we've got our oiled pan right here. I'm going to drizzle about another generous teaspoon of oil over our dough, saving just a little bit left because we're gonna end up drizzling a little bit more on top at the end. I'm gonna take a little bit on my finger here. I'm gonna kind of rub my hands with this oil to make everything non-stick. And then I'm just gonna kind of gather my dough ball out of my bowl here and gently shape it into a ball. So I'm just gonna kind of, here, I'll move this out of the way, get back in here. I'm just gonna kind of gently tuck some of these sides down like this. I'm gonna kind of gather it in the bottom here. And I've got this now nice oily dough ball that I'm going to put in my pan like that, like so. Woo! Sliding around. Lots of oil, but olive oil makes for like really, really good bread, especially with the rosemary. So now we are on step number 6. Place the dough in an oiled pan, cover loosely with a towel, and let rise again until full of air, about 30 minutes. So I'm going to gently cover this. Since it's very oily, I'm actually going to use plastic wrap to put on top of this. We're going to let it rise again for about 30 minutes. During kind of the end of that 30 minutes, maybe like 20 minutes in, or when it starts to really poof up, I'm gonna start preheating my oven to 400 degrees and just get that going. And then I will get back to you guys about what we're doing after that. So for right now, we're gonna let this guy sit, poof up a bit more, and then we're gonna cover it with plastic wrap and then preheat our oven when the time is right. My hands are really, really oily, so be careful not to make a huge mess with your oily hands. I'm gonna have to like gently with my knuckle turn off my iPad here, but I'll check back in with you guys in about a half hour. All right, so oven is preheated to 400 degrees. My dough ball here, I actually I covered it in plastic and I let it sit on top of my oven while the oven was preheating and warming up, and that helped to expedite the proofing and the poofing of the dough. So I'm gonna take off my plastic wrap here, and now we have a nice lovely puffy dough ball ready to be baked. So oven's ready to go. We're going to move on to step number 8, drizzle a little bit more oil over the top. We only have a little bit of oil left, and this is already pretty oily, so we don't need a ton. If at this point your dough ball is like oily enough where you don't think it needs any more oil, you don't have to add this last bit of oil. I probably will, but so I'm gonna add a little more oil. I'm gonna do a nice big sprinkle of the coarse salt. You don't have to add the rest of your salt. I still have quite a bit left, so at this point I'll probably just do like a nice big sprinkle. And then we will add my rosemary, and then we're gonna give this a nice snip with some scissors to kind of open it up, and that way as the dough bakes and more moisture is released, it will release out the top and it won't make the bread loaf like explode out of one side. Basically, we're gonna give a vent for that steam to come out. So, okay, one thing at a time. We're gonna start with one more little drizzle of oil here. Check. We're going to do a sprinkle of rosemary that we have left. I've got a little bit more. We'll get kind of around the edges here. Yum, yum. I still have a little bit left. I'm not going to use all of it. You can if you want to, but I think this is already a pretty generous amount. I'm going to do a nice sprinkle of our coarse salt here. I still have quite a bit left. So again, if you like a lot of salt, you can use it. If you don't like a lot of salt, just use as much as you want. And then we are going to take some clean scissors, and right in the middle here, I'm just gonna do a snip and a snip. And I've kind of made an X on top right here, and that's where the steam is gonna come out. At this point, we will bake our loaf for 35 to 40 minutes until the top is starting to brown. Then there is the option to turn on the broiler to brown it even more. I'm gonna see where we're at after 35 or 40 minutes and go from there. So I'll check in with you guys after about 35, 40 minutes. Hopefully we'll have a nice baked loaf of bread forming. So I'll see you then. Okay, so quickly. It was 35 minutes. I checked my bread. It looks done. I gave it a tap, the top of the bread, and it sounded like nice and hollow. It was crusty on the outside, but it sounded hollow on the inside. That's a really good sign. For my bread, I just turned the broiler on, and if you decide to do this, if you think your bread needs a little bit more, if it sounds done, if it looks pretty much done, and you think it needs just a little bit more browning on top, with adult supervision, you can turn your broiler on and broil it for like a minute. I'm keeping a really close eye on mine. I'm gonna take it out in like 30 seconds and show you guys, because I wanted it just a little bit more brown on top. But 35 minutes seemed to do it. So, okay, I'm gonna take it out. Oh my goodness, you guys. Oh, like sizzling on top. And if you want to drizzle, if it looks like the top got a little dry or anything, you can drizzle a little bit more olive oil on top if you want to. This is awesome. This is not going to be like a big poofy loaf of bread that you might get at like, I don't know, like a bakery or something, but like this is gonna make some awesome sandwiches. This could be dinner bread. You can see it's a little bit more like shallow, but that's actually exactly what we're looking for. In the picture on the recipe, they cut it into wedges here and not slices, so it could be a really good like dinner bread, whatever you guys want to do with it. It smells so good. You can see my little cross on top started to get a little bit crispy. I am so excited to try this. It definitely needs to cool off for a long time before we cut into it, so it can it's still gonna continue to bake even after we pull it out of the oven because it's so hot. We're gonna let it cool. It smells amazing. I can see the salt and the rosemary on top, and I'm really excited that they didn't burn. I was like, putting that much rosemary on top, or is it gonna burn? Nope, it looks absolutely great. So, I'm really excited. When I cut into this, I will show you guys what it looks like, and I hope you enjoyed this recipe a lot. Thank you guys so much for watching my final baking video for Virtual Tween Baking. You can go back and watch my other videos at any time if you want to, make these recipes again. This looks amazing. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys ever have any questions or you want to show me your pictures of stuff you made, please email me, reach out to me. Thank you guys for everything. Enjoy your bread. Bye.